We're going live now, so if people can settle down, we're starting in 5 minutes, but we're live. Yeah. Okay. Everybody, the mic's working, right? Yeah. Good evening, everybody. I'm Kavit Ankade from Indian Institute for Human Settlements, and I'll speak about IHS in a moment. But I just want to we are an educational institution, and we've been running a series of public talks since now publics and online for a while. This is our first publics in Chennai. So, very warm welcome from all of us at IHS to you, and thanks for making the time to come here. Thanks also to those who have joined us online for joining us for this panel. And I'm very excited that for our very first publics in Chennai, it's not only us, we have here people from, as panelists and in the audience, from 7 African cities, as well as people, faculty members from University College London, in London. And so a very warm welcome to them also to this, and very excited for a very 1.5 hours going forward. going to briefly lay out the session plan. So in terms of how we are planning this, we will have a panel, but we are going to begin with two short presentations by me and by Adriana Ellen, who's leading the Overdue team. And then we will head into a panel discussion, for which I'll invite the panelists later. And then we'll have a Q&A. So just to say, we'll have two very, very short presentations, and then we'll move on to the panel. So just to begin, so just like I said about IHS, because we're doing this for the first time, we're an education institution based with our main office in Bangalore and a campus in Bangalore, but we're also in Chennai and Trichy in Tamil Nadu, where we work primarily on sanitation. We are a practice-based, urban-focused university. So apart from teaching, we also do practice-based work, and in fact, that's what this panel is about. And we work with partners across India and globally. So today's topic is just sanitation, and I think I would like to begin, though many in the audience would know it, about why sanitation. And instead of telling you about the number of lives saved by sanitation and the issues of dignity associated with sanitation, I think I just want to refer to this because this was a survey carried out of medical doctors across the globe, and they were asked to rate different sanitation discoveries which really, really changed how we live, and sanitation came on top ahead of antibiotics. And we've all at least discovered the importance of vaccination in the last 2 years. And I think this is just to reiterate that before we had proper sanitation systems, whether it was sewerage or we have on-site systems, and we'll talk about that, there were a lot of loss of human life because of that, and still continues to be where there is no proper sanitation system. So to reiterate that for any development agenda in any country, in any city, villages, sanitation remains key. And just to say that for a long time, the understanding of sanitation was access to toilets, which is important, which you'll see on the left-hand side, which is the first thing and most associated with toilets, and remains important. But I want to reiterate that toilets remain necessary but not sufficient conditions. So unless you're able to close the loop in forms of either pipe sewage or in many parts of the world by fecal sludge, there's some disturbance in the mic. By sludge, transportation, treatment, and reuse, we are forever going to have a problem. Is this better? Yeah, okay. Could we move on? So just 2 minutes on our program. So we work closely with the government of Tamil Nadu. It's called TNUSSP. You can see the full form there. We are located within the MOS department, and we are a technical support unit to it. Our mission has been, along with the government, to scale fecal sludge management or septic management, as is known in India, across 600 plus towns, covering 30 million population in Tamil Nadu. And the way we've done this is engaging with multiple stakeholders and also looking at multiple types of initiatives. So we've looked at infrastructure creation and looked at capital investments and financial planning, but then also looked at behavior change in communication, capacity building, etc. And just to say, we are here, and there's some brochures outside if you want to know, but I just want to end by saying that we've reached a significant scale, and when I say we, I mean the state has reached a significant scale in terms of creation of facilities, ensuring service delivery. It's benefiting a population of 15 million plus, but also a lot of institutional strengthening around fecal sludge management has happened. And we are also working in few cities for inclusive sanitation, so improvement, access to urban poor, social protection for sanitation workers, and also working on gender issues, which we are working specifically in Trichy and a few more cities. So that's a very high level overview. I'm hoping more will come through the conversations. This panel and this event today is, the occasion for it is a learning visit between us and a team from Overdue. And I'll hand over and I'll invite Adriana to tell us what Overdue is about. Over to you, Adriana.
Thank you so much, Kavita, and thanks to everyone in the audience and also somewhere there for joining us today in what we all believe is a very critical conversation. I just will take very few minutes to give some context to this conversation and just to outline what do we mean by overdue. So if we go to the first one, overdue, unlike TNUSSP, the Tamil Nadu Urban Sanitation Support Program, is simply a project. It's not a program, it's a project. It's an action research project. And it is run, it is based or led by the Development Planning Unit at University College London. A very similar organization in terms of its mandate, its vision and mission to IIHS, to the Indian Institute for Human Settlements. And in fact, we have a very long-standing relationship. Now, if I go to the next one, first one, let me tell you before I say a couple of words about overdue and our take on sanitation. I just want to highlight who is part of overdue. So overdue is not just the DPU, but more importantly, overdue is made of 11 organizations, very different organizations, from NGOs, women support groups, some academic institutions, working with municipalities across 7 countries in Africa. And this was something really important for us, to trigger a different conversation across Africa. Those countries and those cities are St. Louis in Senegal, Freetown in Sierra Leone, I'm traveling from the west, Abidjan in Ivory Coast, Bukavu in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Mwanza in Tanzania, Beira in Mozambique, and Antananarivo in Madagascar. And we hope that many more cities join this conversation. People from the whole team are here. Some will be in the panel and some more in the room. So I hope very much that you also have the possibility to interact with them. Now, let me say just a couple of things about why do we say first that this is a long overdue issue. And Kavita introduced it very well. We know well, and we have known for a very long time, the benefits, the significant, the unique and indispensable benefits of sanitation and the role that sanitation plays in development. We have gone as far as declaring sanitation a human right, and still we are not getting it right. And this is why we say that this is overdue. It's well overdue. Remember, many of you will remember that back in the 80s, we were talking about, we went through the decade for sanitation for all, universal sanitation. And still, several decades after, we are talking about making some progress, towards improved sanitation, and sometimes not even that, just towards improved facilities. We talk about the taboo, and in fact, we talk about 2 taboos. And we want to make noise and to work loud and to invite a different conversation around these 2 taboos, one inside the other. The first one is sanitation itself. We run cities like if feces and urine didn't exist, as if the most everyday part of our life wasn't part of that. And when we think about what we do in terms of sanitation, what are our visions for sanitation and so on, is to make that reality, to make these body functions invisible to the city, to push them away. And this is what our technology, our systems do in different ways. But within the sanitation taboo, that conversation that we keep avoiding, although it's in our everyday life and on our face, expressed through health, expressed through human rights, expressed in many, many different dimensions, we also find a second important taboo, which is a gender taboo. There is a significant gender taboo within the sanitation taboo. And that means that we tend, or policies, programs, our actions, the way we deal with sanitation across cities tends to make women invisible in a number of ways. Just to name 2, one has to do with this idea that, if you wish, the control over certain bodies, the making absolutely invisible that very specific needs in relation to sanitation. But perhaps even more importantly, even when women are acknowledged and not invisible, they are only acknowledged as users. When in reality, what we see is that women are not just users. Women are crucial, critical, to the provision of sanitation. And this is true not only in rural areas, it's true across urban Africa, and we know it's true across urban Latin America, where I come from, and also across urban India. So we are really passionate about tackling those two taboos, one inside the other. How we work is we are trying, or we want to trigger and frame a different conversation, one that it doesn't just look at the deficit in infrastructure, but at the legacies, that we have to tackle, the reasons why we keep on failing on really improving, delivering inclusive sanitation and not just more infrastructure. Central to the project is the production of actionable knowledge, and by this we mean ways of doing things differently. If there is a sector where clearly we are getting things wrong, it's the sanitation sector. And I really say sector with hesitation, because we know that we have to take sanitation outside of the box. But we need to think about ways of doing things differently. Part of that, we can see, very importantly, has to do with the thinking across the whole sanitation chain, something that very often doesn't happen. It is as part of this way of working that we came to this visit. I mean, a year ago, we had the pleasure of having Kavita with us when we were getting together in the UK as a team. We learned about the Tamil Nadu Urban Sanitation Support Program. We couldn't believe the spectrum of ways in which the team, and together with the state, together with local communities, was really trying to do things differently. This is what brought us together, and this is what represents, if you wish, our encounter, our learning encounter. So this is the context in which we're having this conversation, and I'm going now to invite Kavita to introduce the full panel. Thank you.
So could I invite all the panelists to please join us, and then I'll introduce all of you, please. Tim. Yeah, so I'm very happy to be introducing the panelists. All panelists, like Adriana mentioned, are part of the Overdue project. I will start with Elder. So just next to me is Elder Dominoes, who is the founder of Face Association, a local community-based organization focused on urban sanitation in the city of Beira, Mozambique. Welcome, Elder. Next to him is Tim Ndesi. He's the director of Center for Community Initiative Tanzania, who works in hand with the Tanzanian Federation of the Urban Poor in Mwanza, Dar es Salaam, and other cities and Tanzania. Welcome, Tim. Glad to have you here. And then we have Claudie Vohe, who is a gender expert associated with the Overdue project. Welcome, Claudie. And then we have Penda with us. Penda Duif, she is the president of the Observatory for Gender and Development for in St. Louis in Senegal. Welcome to good to have you here. Then we have Astrid. Welcome, Astrid. Astrid Moinga is the coordinator of the Congolese Women's Chord for Balance in the Household / Gender in Action. It's an organization based in Bukavu in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Very glad to have you, Astrid. And finally, we have Brahma. Brahma Koroma is the Director of Research and Training at the Sierra Leone Urban Research Center based in Freetown. Welcome, Brahma. A warm welcome once more to all of you. And with that, we can begin our panel discussion. So the way we'll do it is we'll do the panel discussions in 2 rounds. So we'll do first round with the first question to Elder and Tim, and after which I'll hand over to Adriana for the second round. So the first round of question really is focused around the full cycle of sanitation, which I spoke about in my presentation, which talks about that sanitation is not just about toilets, but the full chain from safe collection, disposal, treatment and disposal, and reuse. And often the conversation remains around toilets, so we don't talk about the full chain. And often the conversation about the full chain also remains very technology centric. So it's about all about technology and the technology choices you make. And it's not that. So the full chain, I want to re-emphasize, is about stakeholders, it's about institutions, it's about regulation, it's about all those things. And I guess the question which I'm leading up to for the panelists is also, you can actually talk about the full chain of sanitation, and you can actually talk about technologies without actually talking about the urban poor at all. It is possible to, have this in a very narrow way where you're saying we're taking care of sanitation, but leave those out of the discussion at all, to whom sanitation matters the most. So I guess the question is, to start with Elder and then Tim, is that, what does it take from your context and from whatever you've seen in Tamil Nadu, what does it take to make the full cycle of change, particularly technologies, work for the urban poor?
Thank you for the question. Well, in our context, the sanitation topic is something very new, because for my country, the war finished in 1992, and after that, the government was made some projects that gives to the people, to the household, free toilets. So the toilets were free to infringe the fake, the open defecation. So after that, many things was changed until 1998, and people supposed to buy for them own money toilets. They need to invest. So many people were waiting to government give them toilet for free. This is a situation, and from 10 years until today, from 10 years to now, many municipalities are trying to embrace more the situation of sanitation. But there is a challenge in terms of technicians, know-how, and financing. So the solution, comes with donors from outside, international donor that brings money, that brings funds, that brings technology. And what happens right now is that most of the solutions that we have in the community are being brought, but with the big donors or with the international donors. So the challenge is that this solution are technology that doesn't engage with the local situation. Most of the time, these big projects come and they build the toilets, they build big infrastructure, they build like canals, drainage systems, big infrastructure, and the challenge for the local government or local municipality is to do the operation and maintenance. Even for the community, you can find a toilet that the condition is not good, but for some people, they consider that this condition is good because the situation for their house is worse than the toilet. So this means that this solution is very advanced, or is in front of what is the solution that supposed to be there, or the people not engaged are not part of the decisions. What this solution will be applied there. So the challenge remains there. The project brings solution. This solution is there, and for 2 or 3 years there is a problem on operation and maintenance. So the solution it starts from zero. Is a problem there. You have an infrastructure that is not functional. So after that, after 3 years or 4 years, another project comes in. They found the situation that is infrastructure that is not working. They rehabilitate this infrastructure. The cycle is starting from zero. You have a situation that we build the toilets, we build the infrastructure, and there is a negligence of operation or maintenance, and after that, you need to rebuild again this solution. So as a local organization, what we see is that maybe we can advocate more, maybe we can make more noise to the municipality, local municipality, to invite the local organization to the table that these big projects are being negotiated. Maybe to give them the information that in the bottom of the on the fields or on the neighborhood, we appreciate that the solutions are coming, but the things should be on this way or that way. So give our view of the solution. So this is something difficult because we understood that even for them, the municipality doesn't have a lot of space to say, for example, for the World Bank, like, okay, we appreciate your investment, your solution, but we want to do the thing on this way, not your way. So it's something difficult that we see that we should be more focused right now and try to have a good conversation and create a space that the most of the funds can hear what is going on the bottom, not only bring solutions that are decided on the top, and the investment comes for the top, and the bottom is something new, is something that we cannot engage with the community or in our contest. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to share with you some of the very important subject about sanitation. I graduated as a civil engineer about 30 years ago, and from the education that I learned as a civil engineer, I learned about very sophisticated solutions that sometimes were very difficult to be implemented at the community level. These were solutions that gave assumptions that people would be living in areas which are very well planned, which have accessible to roads, and which have everything is well designed. When we are in college, we were trained like that. But when I started working, my first assignment was to work with community living in cities. And that's where I realized that in our cities, particularly in Tanzania, the cities are growing in a very big way, to the extent that more than 70 to 80% are living in the informal settlements. These are areas which are very congested. There's no space. So in that way, the knowledge that I learned from the university on civil engineering and water supply and sanitation were not actually very feasible in those situations. And the reason is because when we are being trained, we are trained not to be very innovative, not to be flexible. We are trained in a way that we could be able to design things which are in a very straightforward, where there's space and land availability. So I worked a bit in the government, but later on I joined the non-government organization, the NGO. And during the time when I worked with NGO, that's where I got exposure to understand that within sanitation, there are a number of different technologies which could suit the people who are living within the informal settlements. So one of the technology that we were able actually to learn from the different exposures is about the simplified sewerage solutions. In a city where right now we are working as overdue, it's called Mwanza City, which is the second city in terms of capital and infrastructure in Tanzania. So the city characteristics is around the lake zone, is within the lake. There's a big lake, it's called Victoria Lake, which is bordering Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. And the surrounding of that lake is hilly, and these hilly are also rocky. And quite a number of informal settlement people, they live in those rocky, hilly sides. And you can really understand now, you are living in the hilly and within the rocky, and you need a toilet, and there's no pipe network. So what are the solutions? You need to address that one. Because the major problem is that one, people defecating from those hilly, all the effluent is going to the lake. And you can really imagine now all water supply for the whole city of Mwanza comes from the lake. And then not only water supply, but also delicate fish is coming from that lake. So that was a major challenge which the city was trying to solve. What can we do to address sanitation solution to the hilly side? And that's where the innovation of the simplified sewerage solution came into being. And we as my organization called Center for Community Initiatives, CCI, we were very lucky to get exposure to a technology of simplified sewerage, which has been implemented in a number of countries, including Brazil. So we brought experts in Tanzania to train our people. It's a technology which requires community to work together, both women and men, to agree where the pipeline network could go. And it's a technology which also allows community and the utility or the corporation would work together. So we have been able actually to collaborate between the community, the government, and the water body to develop these systems, which is now working properly. So simplified sewerage connect people from the hilly side to the sewerage network, which goes into the West Stabilization Pond. So I would summarize by saying that when you work with informal settlement and urban poor, you need innovation, you need flexibility, and you need to have incremental understanding in order to solve those problems.
Thank you so much, Kavita, Elder, and team. We just want to add another provocation to have some insights from the rest of the panelists, and then go to all of you to continue the conversation. And the second provocation, something that we observed throughout the 10 days we have spent here. I think that most of us were found really striking the role, if you wish, the way in which the state government and the municipal government and the panchayat government, the government at different levels from state to ULBs, takes a very strong stake, at least in this context and in the context of this program, in relation to the responsibility they have to produce just sanitation, to produce inclusive sanitation. Not to do that alone, but in co-production, in collaboration with civil society, and particularly with the urban poor, and particularly with collectives of the urban poor, and within those with women, and so on. So the story of this alliance, critical alliance, is very clear here. Now, when people reflected in their context, they were saying, well, the story is quite different, because if we look at local authorities in the context of many African cities, we will find that actually sanitation, beyond maintaining perhaps the toilets, public toilets in the market and so on, is not, or solid waste management, is not perceived as a question for the state, for the local state. So our question for the three panelists is, how can community action and government action converge towards inclusive sanitation?
Extent. And most times,
The financial investment within sanitation would also be much more low. Like even, for instance, in Sierra Leone, government is spending less than 0.02% of the ministry budget as related to sanitation. And most of the activity, even at the municipal level, are mostly donor-driven. And that means they are often coming in overly prescriptive modes that often leave the urban poor, outside the particular realm. So what we are doing as an organization to be able to actually ensure that we have an inclusive sanitation program, we have sort of experimented to advance just an inclusive sanitation by using what's called participatory sanitation learning. As part within two of the informal settlements in which definitely we are working. And participatory sanitation learning definitely involves initially some capacity building program in which we're able to actually work with the Federation of Urban and Rural Poor by engaging in what's called project management, resource mobilization, and how possibly can also be able to mobilize, negotiating other different set of urban stakeholders within the process. And I want also to remind you that indeed, within communities, the ingenuity of those community actors are much more relentless. On the basis of that, through that engagement mobilization process, they actually have to realize that indeed there is a need for collective action. So that created a new opportunity for them to actually start coming together to take action, in addition to the elected local councillor that was actually with them. And on the basis of that, after the capacity building workshop program, they're able to actually think about pulling up resources together. So collectively, they engage in some collective actions. And these are, over time, they actually be able to help them to engage other city actors to negotiate, collective sanitation, program. That had definitely be able to actually expand within the community, as the case may be. Also created opportunity for private sector investment, sanitation service provision, while also working with NGOs and other set of actors. As a framework, what we have been able to do as an institution, we also have another layer of where you have democratic engagement of different set of actors. So at the community level, we have what's called community learning platform, and we have also the city learning platform where we bring together those community actors to the city level so that they be able actually to engage and be able to design collective solutions in how possibly can also be able to address that one. Another layer to the debates had been, like, of course, we have the mayor that had been much more enthusiastic around environmental sanitation. She actually developed what's called the Transform Faith and Framework. And within that agenda, she actually have a target about 60% of waste, liquid or solid waste, to actually be collected by 2022. That was basically the agenda. And within that framework, she was able to actually bring what's called clean zone competition. So meaning more or less energize the community for them to actually be able to take collective actions in addressing sanitation problems in their respective community. And they are often being promised by the provision of some basic set of infrastructure, communities that are much more, cleaner, or be able to actually take control of their sanitation problem within those set of area. And these are definitely be able to actually work, citizens, interface with local council, and that one had actually be able to work across the city as the case may be. So, of course, what we are able to actually look within the India context, we have seen that kind of deliberate attempt in terms of actually having what safely inclusive sanitation management, basically involving multi-stakeholder actors or governance structure that are brought together, research institutions, NGOs, civil society actors, and all of these things. That is something that had really helped within the broader context, and also the gender constellation. And even when you look at the federated parts that we actually integrated with our program, we actually saw similar set of trends even within the SHG in terms of participatory approach, in terms of dialogue, mapping, and all of these things. Which definitely they will be able to actually engender some form of actions at the local or community level. So by way of convergence, of course, more or less linking what have been done in form of precedent setting, and this one is also being linked up to the much more broader, stakeholder actors, for them to actually know that indeed there is an infinite or limitless resources within the community level, and they can also be able to actually take action irrespective of, huge set of investment, even just among themselves. They can also be able to pool resources and be able to actually engage in, inclusive sanitation at the community level. I thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Brahima. And this really talks back to one of the points that Elder was raising at the beginning, the importance of breaking in Freetown, like in Beira, this process by which actually the whole, sanitation solution is donor-driven and it becomes a problem more than a solution. And the recognition that you need to bring the state, the local state, to the table. I want to now move to Astrid to help us to think about how do you really bring the state, the local government, to the table in a way that is not instrumental. Because we know that very often these conversions with local communities and the local state happens in an instrumental way, as a way of acknowledging that communities can chip in their time, their resources, their labor, and so on. But we are talking about a different type of conversions. We are talking about producing entitled citizenship through sanitation. So Astrid, how do you do that? How do you how do you make the state accountable? And how do you make sure that it plays its part?
Just disappears and it's just being shared by the people who look after the toilet, inverted comma.
Comme conséquence, ces toilettes étaient très très mal entretenues. Il y avait très peu de femmes qui avaient le courage de pouvoir les fréquenter. Alors, c'est Overdu en fait qui nous a mis sur le chemin de pouvoir mettre un peu l'accent sur l'entretien de ces toilettes avec le financement que nous avons obtenu avec, disons, le Flexi Fund. Et cela nous a permis de pouvoir parler aux femmes au niveau des marchés pour pouvoir en fait s'occuper un peu de l'entretien de ces toilettes. Et nous avons fait aussi recours à la municipalité pour leur montrer quand même que les toilettes n'étaient pas du tout entretenues et qu'il fallait faire quelque chose.
So really this issue of sanitation was brought to their attention by the project. When we actually went to them to involve them in the project, they realized that yes, there was actually an issue in sanitation. And so they started to speak to the women, they started engaging them. They realized that actually very few of them had the courage to use the toilets, given the state that they were in, the bad conditions they were in. So they really started that conversation with the women, and also they started that conversation with the municipality. 2 minutes.
Alors qu'il est, avec tout ce que nous avons pu prendre comme contact avec la municipalité, et il a été décidé que la commune, la mairie vont pouvoir s'investir pour d'abord nous accompagner dans le travail que nous faisons. Et pour cela, il y a ce qu'on appelle la réunion du budget participatif. Et dans cette assemblée, bien cette réunion-là, nous allons pouvoir faire le lobbying, nous allons pouvoir insister pour que d'abord la municipalité puisse s'investir comme il faut, et de façon concrète, à subventionner aussi l'entretien de ces toilettes d'abord, et nous donner un espace où nous pouvons construire des toilettes publiques pilotes que nous allons pouvoir nous-mêmes gérer pour essayer de montrer un peu l'exemple à travers la ville.
So with this project, we're really working hard on making sure that the municipality will get involved and particularly supporting what we're trying to do. And one mechanism that we have identified is the participatory budgeting, which exists within the city. And we want to lobby to make sure that the issue of sanitation becomes part of the conversation and becomes part of what is being financed through the participatory budgeting. And we also want to insist, for the municipality to really play its role, particularly on the issue of maintenance, but also on the very critical issue of finding space. The land belongs to the municipality, it's public space, and so we really want the municipality to make sure that they identify space where we can build more toilets, where we can pilot more toilets, and particularly where we can show that community management of toilet is a possibility.
En fin de compte, nous allons insister pour que les femmes elles-mêmes soient responsabilisées à prendre soin de ces toilettes. Nous savons très bien que l'assainissement, c'est dans notre éducation, mais on doit maintenant la structurer pour que ça puisse être quand même visible à travers toute la ville.
And really, one key issue is to ensure that women are part of this conversation, of this job. We know that sanitation is part of the education we receive, and now we need to really make it concrete, and particularly that it works for and with women.
Thank you so much, Astrid. And continuing with a couple of the issues that you put on the table so well, highlighting the political processes that have to be in place and also the connecting of resources from land to money, I want to invite Penda from St. Louis in Senegal to also reflect on the questions of conversions. How do you craft that conversions between community/collective action and government action, local government action?
Merci beaucoup, merci. J'ai dit bonjour, bonsoir à tout le monde. Les femmes, les hommes.
Hello to everyone, women, men.
Je suis contente d'être en Inde. J'ai vu, j'ai observé et j'ai tiré des leçons. Vas-y.
So I'm so happy to be in India. I came, I saw things, I observed, and now I have lessons to share.
Je suis vraiment impressionnée par la coordination des actions communautaires avec les pouvoirs publics, notamment la municipalité et l'État.
I'm really impressed by the cooperation that I saw between community action, municipality, and the state.
Pourtant, dans ma ville natale, Saint-Louis du Sénégal, qui est l'ancienne capitale française, nous avons des cadres institutionnels que nous n'arrivons pas à faire démarrer pour répondre aux attentes des populations. Je veux parler des conseils de quartier qui ont été créés par les populations avec l'appui municipal. Ces conseils de quartier-là ont un rôle fondamental pour le développement de la ville.
So I want to speak in Saint Louis, where I come from. We do have institutional frameworks that are in place, but we actually can't manage to get them really to work. And one such framework that I want to talk about is what we call the kind of advisory neighborhood committees. These have been created by the municipality, with the help of the municipality, and they have a fundamental role to play in making sure that the needs of the populations get taken care of.
Et imaginez-vous, ils ont été créés pour faciliter la participation citoyenne des hommes et des femmes aux politiques de développement, pour qu'ils aient la parole, pour qu'ils puissent évaluer, pour qu'ils puissent donner leur avis par rapport à ce qu'ils vivent actuellement, notamment dans le secteur de l'assainissement.
So these advisory neighborhood committees have actually been created for that very purpose of making sure that citizens get a voice and get channels to express their needs and participate in the formulation of public policies.
Malheureusement, ces conseils de quartier-là sont laissés à eux-mêmes. Tout simplement parce qu'il n'y a pas de formation, il n'y a pas de sensibilisation, notamment dans le domaine de l'assainissement et dans tous les secteurs d'ailleurs, ce sont des conseils de quartier qui existent et qui sont, disons, utilisés par les politiques en cas de besoin pour des besoins électoraux.
So really, because these committees have been totally abandoned, they've had no capacity building, no sensitization. They do exist, but they are merely used by politicians in the times of elections, instrumentalized by politics.
C'est pourquoi moi, en regardant ce qui se passe en Inde, je me suis dit que ce que je vais faire chez moi, c'est pénétrer le cadre de ces conseils de quartier-là pour les éveiller, les sensibiliser, éveiller leur conscience, illuminer leur esprit pour qu'ils puissent prendre à bras le corps les problèmes d'assainissement qui se posent dans notre ville.
So what I have decided to do when I go home is to really get in touch and really penetrate, is what the word she's using, those advisory committees, to really enlighten them, to sensitize them, to really make sure that they have all the information that they need to really grab the topic of sanitation and put it to the forefront.
Déjà depuis 2016, nous avons eu à mettre en œuvre un projet de budgétisation sensible au genre au niveau de notre commune. Et on s'était déjà rendu compte que, au niveau des résultats, que le secteur de l'assainissement de la ville ne prenait pas en compte les besoins des femmes et des enfants.
In 2016, we actually did a citizen-based gender-responsive budgeting project in Saint-Louis, looking at the budget of the municipality. And already then we had realized that sanitation was just not taking gender issues on board at all, and children, gender and children in general.
Et moi, comme stratégie, je proposerai des formations en hygiène, santé et assainissement. Je proposerai des sensibilisations. Je proposerai des comités de veille, des comités d'alerte. Et bien sûr, nous allons les former pour être de forts plaidoyers auprès des autorités publiques municipales.
So what I really want to do is to embark on a program of training and sensitization on health, sanitation and education, and really make sure that we set up some kind of vigilante committees that will be in a capacity, in a lobby capacity facing the municipality.
Nous avons aussi beaucoup parlé du travail invisible des femmes dans le secteur de l'assainissement, notamment dans l'espace domestique et dans l'espace de quartier.
We have also talked a lot about the invisible work of women at the household and the neighborhood level in sanitation.
Et les résultats de ces recherches, parmi les recommandations, il y avait la formation des femmes en santé, hygiène, assainissement. Nous avons fait ces formations et comme résultat positif que nous avons eu, les femmes actuellement ont créé des activités de revenus, notamment à travers la production de savon, pour laquelle elles ont reçu des formations.
So one thing we decided to do to make that invisible more visible was to train women, and particularly few groups have received training in soap making and making detergents, and now they're actually developing their economic activity around that.
Et dans notre imagination aussi, nous sommes en train de faire une étude de faisabilité pour la méthanisation au niveau des ménages ou bien au niveau des quartiers, pour permettre aux femmes de réduire leurs dépenses en électricité, pour permettre aux femmes de participer à l'environnement, pour permettre aux femmes aussi de se créer des revenus à partir du digesta qui sera créé à partir de la méthanisation.
And one thing that we have already also imagined is the working with biodigesters that households could be using that would actually reduce the cost and also create, savings on energy. Yeah, I think we need to count the translation time, though. She is, okay. Tu veux sur la microfinance un mot? Non? Okay, so we finished? Sur la microfinance, juste tu disais faire le lien avec le microfinance qui existe.
Et pour encourager ces femmes à se trouver des financements, nous avons des mutuelles. Nous avons des tontines. Pour ceux qui ne connaissent pas, les tontines, c'est quand les femmes se cotisent et qu'à tour de rôle, chacun gagne une cagnotte qu'elle peut utiliser pour s'investir dans une activité. Et je vous dis qu'au niveau de l'assainissement, dans les années prochaines, attendez-vous à voir à Saint-Louis des femmes entrepreneurs dans le secteur de l'assainissement, notamment dans le secteur du vidange, hein, dans le secteur de la fabrication de savon, hein, dans le secteur de... En tout cas, dans des secteurs où vraiment l'assainissement, la femme sera au cœur des activités. Je vous remercie.
And so one thing that we really want to do to facilitate this process is to link those new ideas, those new business ideas, to link them with existing loan schemes. We've got a lot of traditional revolving loan funds. And so I can guarantee you that in a few years' time, when you come to Saint Louis, you will see many women involved in different aspects of sanitation, as pit emptiers, as in the business of sanitation, different levels of the chain, and we will be using those existing financial mechanism, to make sure that happens. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Penda. We believe that will happen. So we now have quite a few minutes for discussion. So the floor is open for any questions, comments, observations. Please, can you say, I'm going to pass the micro, or you have a micro on the floor? And if you can introduce yourself and if you want to address a question to anyone in particular.
Thank you. You are an excellent moderator. The thing is, I have a couple of questions. First, I would like to make addressee, and if the French-speaking lady could kindly translate on behalf of me. I'm a foreign affairs journalist. I'm also a scholar with a Dhaka-based think tank called Center for Governance Studies in Bangladesh. So, India runs a... Yeah.
We have a simultaneous interpretation for Astrid and Pen.
Okay.
So if you can speak slowly.
Certainly. I'm extremely sorry. Yeah, I'll abide by that norms. Yeah, you're still the moderator. I forgot. Yeah. So for Astrid Muninga, madam, you said about how the public goods and sanitizations are being politicized, and at times you said the budget. I mean, it was not respected at all. So during the election, does the public health or sanitation get a mention in the political manifesto? This is the question for you. Yeah.
Do you have anything else that you want to put? We are collecting a few, so if you have another question.
Yeah, I have other general question and generic one. India runs a program called ITEC, International Technical and Economical Assistance Program, ITEC. And from its budget, it gives a big cut to African states. So can anyone please talk about, the Indian investment in the capacity building and infrastructure, HID something is High Impact Development Program or something it's called. So on that, in those countries. Yeah, and also how the Chinese funds are vying with IMF in this process. Thank you.
Okay, I open a box. That's great. Thank you so much for the questions. Let's start with the first one, or shall we collect another point? They were quite diverse. So on the one hand, the question of, is sanitation a political matter when it comes at least to electoral times? And does sanitation get caught in a political, clientelism, if you wish? So one question for Astrid. Perhaps Penda might want to react to that question as well. The question on the investments, just to see, because we are going to move to everyone. Assistance, assistance. So wants to know a bit more. We talk a lot about the very strong weight that donors have in all the contexts in which you work. And he wants to know a bit more about the configuration of that donor assistance in the sanitation sector, particularly in relation to India and China. Yep, okay. anyone, if anyone else wants to pick the second question, that's fine.
Oui, j'ai commencerai plutôt à répondre à la première question, à savoir si lors des élections, les politiques dans leur propagande font allusion, par exemple, font des promesses à l'amélioration de l'assainissement. Je dirais que presque pas. Presque pas parce que le problème de l'assainissement n'est pas vraiment leur priorité. Même quand ils établissent leur budget, rarement ils font allusion à l'assainissement public, par exemple à la construction des toilettes publiques. Ils font rarement allusion à la construction, par exemple, des égouts qui ne sont plus en très très bon état. Donc cela n'est pas vraiment leur préoccupation prioritaire.
So the answer is to the question is no, that it's not. It's not part of the political discourse, and it's therefore not part either. Once they are elected, it's not part of what they put in their planning. It's definitely not part of the budget. It's not a priority. You never see money put aside for sewage or the construction of public toilets.
Of course, sanitation really had not taken a center stage within the broader political debate. But there are some at the time of election, they might tend to provide services related to sanitation, but that had not really resulted to, massive set of votes for, set of politicians actually seeking election. Even within our country context, for instance. Because I could remember there was one MP, government that was actually went and established a sanitation facility within one community that was highly, where elections are often being based on ethno-regional consideration, not necessarily development action. They don't even care about whether development takes place or not, but they're only voting on based on their own ethnic clan. That kind of issue had not actually been able to take much more impact. In terms of aid to Africa or other, mostly within, for instance, our own country context, mostly it had been like even the World Bank, the ADB, and other institutions really had focused on some level of sanitation, process really. Mostly within India, it had been like even security. They'll be able to actually provide security during the time of war in Sierra Leone, and some are also involved in some medical, process within now, and mostly within business environment, not specifically focused on sanitation activity. Thank you.
I don't see any other hand, because otherwise I'm going to go to, yes, there's one more there, okay. Before we go there, I want to add the question of aid. We were talking precisely about some of the proportions. When we look at the overall investments that go into sanitation, how much, in contexts like Mozambique, actually, come from donors and how much comes from the government? I don't know if you want to pick on that discussion.
Yes. We spoke about this here today in the morning, that the investment that are being done in sanitation in Mozambique, if we look to 100 medical, in 100 medical, 5 medical, in 100 medical, 5 medical is money of the government, 95 comes from the funders. If you look to investment that are made in sanitation. That's why we have very big struggle, very big problem, challenge to make this solution sustainable after the end of the project. After the donor cuts the fund, it's big challenge for local organizations to keep this solution running.
So we call this the build and neglect cycle, yeah, which is very much donor-driven. There is another question there.
Yeah. This is a question from Vinay Patel, who's joined us online. Can full sanitation cycle, the value chain, be completed in African cities? From generation to safe disposal and reuse, please specify stage-wise technology models used.
So, the first difficult question.
Should I
Let's make it
repeat?
clear.
Yeah.
Make sure that we fully understand it because it's a very well thought question.
Can the full sanitation cycle be completed in African cities? From generation to safe disposal and reuse, please specify stage-wise technology and models used.
Okay, perfect. I think that I have a candidate.
Yeah, I think. I think the whole FICO/management FSM means that from the toilet containment, transportation until the treatment and the reuse, there are levels which almost every city is normally being used. To give an example, like in Mwanza, there are about 15% of the city dwellers, they are connected to the sewerage. And there are about 20 DSO, dislodging lorries, which they are doing dislodging to the septic tank. But as what I said, the challenge is still very huge because large percentage of people still use on-site sanitation, which becomes very difficult to follow the whole chain. And right now, there is quite a lot of innovations and the flexibilities which is now being developed to address that particular challenge. But in most cities, there is sort of like an attempt to really develop those steps. For example, in Mwanza, rather than using STPs, we use WSP, the Waste Stabilization Pond. And there are also some innovations on how to reuse the waste from those particular ponds. So the innovation is still there, but as what my colleague have said, sanitation is less funded. It requires a lot of funding and mostly from donor communities. So government need to are also required to budget more on sanitation in order to allow more other communities to be able to follow the FSTP and the STP as well.
I don't know if anyone else, Elder, do you want to add on that? Yeah, we have another question. Perhaps one thing to add here that we're really impressed and really to celebrate in the Tamil Nadu Urban Sanitation Support Program is the ability that the program has had in opening multiple routes and travel across the whole sanitation chain. What I think we find is that the problem is that we are locked in a particular technological solution, and then you cannot travel. Yeah, you cannot travel with the benefits across the whole sanitation chain. So that flexibility, that variability, that open an option, a portfolio of options at every stage of the chain is critical. And I think that that's one of our critical lessons we take with us.
My question for Tim and Helder. You have mentioned that sanitation in urban contexts require a lot of innovation. It was mentioned that whenever donor goes, whenever the fund goes, things fall apart. So, your experience in your country and what you have seen in a couple of days in India, do you think that in your country as well as here, we need sanitation to emerge as a separate ministry like health, education, which will take forward the learning and also to mobilize funds? So that's one question. To question is that we see in sanitation a lot of presence of women, sometimes maybe undervalued, but only at the basic level. But when we go on top of this, we don't see many. Here in India, there are a couple of departments in particular state where the entire cadre is women. Women Development Department has at every level women, from the ground level to the top decision makers. They have mandated that it should be women if the women development has to. Do you think that there is any value to have something similar in sanitation at any level? Thank you.
Two very interesting questions, and I could see everyone liking the one of the ministry. Sorry. So who wants to take that one? You want to? Brahima, please. We go to the second one.
Yeah, of course, we have had this. Yeah, we have had these debates, and of course, it's much more typical. Even most times within different set of countries, they have Ministry of Health and Sanitation. That framing, connection between sanitation and public health, for instance, had not actually come out much more strongly in terms of some of the key how budgetary allocations are often being given to sanitation. Mostly health is given much more prominence. So within which, even the allocated budget to it is often a critical challenge as well. Then what has happened within our own country context had been, you have had multiple rules. That's why even within the current discussion, I asked about those conflicting rules, overlapping rules between different set of agencies and institutions that has to actually do something around sanitation. Within our country context, we have the ministry had a kind of policy rule, and of course you have the local council, they have a liquid and solid waste rule, and you have the Ministry of Health is also carry out another different rule in terms of sewage treatment, sewage systems. So if you have a single entity that can be able to bring on board all of these different actions, all of these different functions under one particular roof, I think that can really be able to make it much more effective in terms of how well they're able to actually drive resources, make it much more viable within the current problem that we have around even the climate change related urbanization and even the aging infrastructure, and how best, even within limited resources, what possibly it can also be able to do to raise the most necessary resources. I think it's a very, food for thought, and I think people actually need to actually start thinking about it. Thank you.
Before we go to your second question, I wonder if there is someone that doesn't like the idea of a Ministry of Sanitation. Perhaps, many say that if you want to really create a silo, build it into a ministry. And the question of women has been precisely, following that destiny. Gender equality seems to be a women's issue, and it lives in a ministry which is underfunded and so on. So anyone against the idea of a ministry of sanitation? Do we know, we have a case in which, Brahima was highlighting some aspects while it might give traction, to the sort of policies, investments, decisions that we need to have in place, the conversation that we have to have in place. And I wonder if anyone has the opposite view. Yeah, Tim. And then we come.
Yeah. I think the issue of sanitation has a different connotations, particularly in Tanzania. You have sanitation being spoken or being closed in the Ministry of Health, and also sanitation being closed also in the Ministry of Water and Infrastructure. So as a result, you really found that sanitation has no real home. So even the policy for sanitation in Tanzania, it took a lot of many years to be developed, because the health guys, the sector of health, they say we have embraced sanitation on it. And the Ministry of Water as well say we have embraced on it. So I totally understand why my friend is saying we really need a sanitation ministry so that it can really be raising its profile and also raising the financial and budgeting. But when you talk to politicians, of course, they would really want sanitation to be part within the different sectors, because they really feel that it really touches water, it also touches the health component. So it's a really big challenge at the moment, the way how it is, because sanitation has no real home. And I totally agree with you that we need to continue advocating so that sanitation can have more profile for our sectors as well.
Thank you, Tim. And going back to the second question, shall I summarize it briefly? So it was addressed to Astrid and Penda, or you got it? No? The question, okay, so the question, and I'm sorry if I summarize too much, but the question was, our friend here understands and agrees with the notion that you brought again and again, which has to do with the invisibility of women within the sanitation sector at many levels, yeah? Their work, their roles, their needs, and so on. Do we need a specific schemes to develop gender equality in relation to that invisibility, to tackle that invisibility? Did I get that? No, más o menos. Okay, do you want to read? Yeah? Yes. Yeah. Frame it again. Apologies.
Yeah, so the question for Penda and Astrid is, in sanitation, we see presence of women at various levels, but that presence is mostly concentrated at the basic level. Right. But when we move up the decision-making ladder, women just disappear from the decision-making process. And when also mentioned that there was a gender audit at some point in some municipality, and it was understood that there is no focus on gender at decision-making level. So, do you advocate for something like only women, top to bottom of the Kedar, women in child in some state, but in some state, that a mechanism like that can make sanitation more equitable for women and improve the overall sanitation situation, their service delivery and everything.
Vous allez traduire. Ok, cette question est vraiment pertinente. Quand on parle en fait de l'assainissement, dans notre société, on perçoit que c'est un travail des femmes. Dans la maison, quand on éduque une petite fille, elle doit savoir faire l'assainissement dans la maison et autour de la maison, ainsi de suite. Et le problème, c'est que tout s'arrête là. Il faut maintenant qu'on puisse élever quand même le niveau des femmes pour qu'elles puissent se trouver aussi dans des postes de responsabilité au niveau de l'assainissement, nous sommes en train de faire la sensibilisation pour que d'abord les jeunes filles, les filles ne puissent pas se marier trop vite. Ça, c'est une sensibilisation que nous sommes en train de faire. Il faut qu'elles puissent pousser le plus loin possible leurs études et qu'elles puissent aussi embrasser des sections variées dans leurs études. Et avec ça, nous sommes plus ou moins sûrs que dans le temps, parce que nous nous y mettons maintenant avec Overdu et tout le monde, à sensibiliser tout le monde que l'assainissement, ce n'est pas seulement dans la maison, c'est pas seulement dans la rue quand on parle de travaux publics, mais on peut aussi travailler dans certains niveaux, par exemple des niveaux techniques, ingénieurs d'assainissement, ingénieurs dans la matière des égouts, ainsi de suite. Donc nous y sommes. Nous sommes en train de sensibiliser les filles à pousser le plus loin possible leurs études, sensibiliser les femmes à pouvoir encourager leurs jeunes filles à pousser le plus loin possible leurs études. Et je vous assure que d'ici là, on va atteindre cet objectif-là.
Okay. She said the paradox is that when we bring up young girls, that's what we tell them, that it is their job to look after, to do the sanitation in the house, around the house, and in the neighborhood. So girls are being brought up with that idea in mind, but that's where it stops. We're obviously not advocating for them to raise, to climb the ladder on sanitation. But I would say, Astrid says, that before we do that, we have preconditions. We need to ensure, and that's what we are currently working on, we have to ensure that young girls don't get married too early. Because if they get married too early, they cannot pursue their studies. We need to fight and we need to educate parents and girls to study and to embrace careers that actually lead them to be in those positions, to embrace careers that will obviously take them much beyond cleaning in the house and cleaning the streets, but become engineers. So these are kind of preconditions before we can actually talk about way to educate parents and you put this study and to embrace careers that actually lead them to be in those positions, to embrace careers that will obviously take them much beyond cleaning.
Merci, merci Astrid. Ce que vous venez de dire, c'est effectivement vrai. C'est comme ça que ça se passe sur le terrain. Mais c'est que dans nos sociétés, nous avons les rapports sociaux de sexe, ce qu'on appelle les rapports sociaux de sexe, c'est-à-dire comment ça doit être. La division sexuelle du travail. À la maison, l'homme doit faire ça et la femme doit faire le travail domestique, dont le travail d'assainissement. Et c'est ce comportement de la division sexuelle du travail dans la sphère domestique qui est même transposé au niveau des ministères. Les femmes, bien qu'elles soient des ingénieurs, des techniciennes, parfois leur profil n'est pas exploité comme on exploite le profil des hommes. On leur cantonne toujours à des rôles de, je dirais, de care. Vous êtes la responsable genre du ministère, hein, vous êtes à des rôles vraiment qui ne permettent pas à la personne de prouver ses capacités, de montrer son empowerment, de montrer sa capacité de travailler au même niveau que les hommes.
She totally agrees. The situation that Astrid described is exactly her situation as well. There's something very, very strong, very normative about the gender division of labor at the household, and definitely women are in charge of care. And this mindset, you actually find it within ministries. You have women engineers, technicians, with high capacities. Their skills are not actually fully employed by the ministry. They will be given jobs like looking after gender in engineering, or doing the social part of the engineering work, but not actually doing the hard jobs. So in actual fact, they're never really able to prove that they can actually be as good as men.
Ce qui fait que pour la solution, c'est là où je veux intervenir très vite, c'est qu'il nous faut travailler pour changer les rapports sociaux de sexe. Je veux dire par là que dans la maison, que les filles comme les garçons, qu'on les confie des tâches identiques, qu'ils sachent que balayer, ce n'est pas délégué à une femme, cuisiner, ce n'est pas spécifiquement délégué à une femme. Bon, peut-être l'allaitement est délégué à la femme. Mais l'homme aussi peut donner le biberon à son bébé, etc., faire le care. C'est ce que je voulais dire. Merci.
So it's really a mindset that we need to change, and we have to change the whole chain. From education at a very early age, teaching boys that sweeping, cleaning, cooking, it's not a girl's job, it's also a man's job, boy's job. And the only thing, of course, breastfeeding, that's for female, but then, baby bottle is something that, women can do. So it's really a chain that we have to work on from the household to change the mindset.
Thank you so much, Penda, Claudia, Astrid. We have time for one more question. I know you have been waiting patiently, so thanks for that.
Good evening. One question I had to ask was, there is a tendency to romanticize the role of the state in sanitation. And I come from a part of this country, Bhopal, which has been awarded as the second cleanest city in this country twice. But in practice, that was hardly so. So you had garbage collectors who would be coming to your home, but people would still throw it on the street, and you'd have piles of garbage. So what role can a citizen have in this? And what role can a citizen expect from the government before he does it himself or she does it herself? That's one part of my question. The other thing is, I'm glad you've raised the role of women in sanitation. But in India, there's also a problem that is deeply associated with this, which is the element of caste. This is a job that has traditionally been done by one community of people. I'm sure that such discrimination exists in that part of the world too. And if it does, what solutions will the panelists have to offer in this regard on either side of the world?
Thank you for these two questions. I wish we could stay longer. I'm going to do something. I'm going to ask Claudie, because she's not the interpreter, she's willingly interpreting, to deal with the second question, and Kavita to deal with the first question, and then I will pass the micro to you.
On the issue of caste? On caste? Okay. Okay. Big question. I mean, as you know, more and more we are talking about gender in an intersectional manner, which is recognizing that being a female or female is one identity, but then there are many other identities that come around it. And of course, for us, being in India and having to deal with intersectionality in a very concrete manner around the issue of caste is something that was really important. Important as well to realize that within caste, there is hierarchy, which is the gender hierarchy. So it's not an exclusive relation. It's not either gender hierarchy or caste hierarchy, but we can really see, how they interact. And other than, Madagascar at some point had a system which was, there was something that could have been assimilated or a bit similar to caste issue. In the Congo or in Senegal, we can't really be talking about caste issue, but there's clearly a class issue, and it's definitely a more precarious community that takes on board, all the sanitation issues. So in terms of solutions, what we have seen in India is really the work that is being done about the destigmatization of sanitation, and having seen what is being done in India and reflecting on what's happening in all other cities as well, I think that's definitely a way to get into it, is to actually destigmatize the profession and value the service that is being rendered by these various communities, whether it's based on class or based on caste, and then also based on gender. And I strongly believe that this is really the way forward, is to really value, and that's value socially, to break, all the taboos that are being associated with this profession, and maybe consider it as a profession, not just an occupation.
And we have two colleagues here from Antananarivo as well. If you want to also expand, we couldn't fit everyone in the panel, but I would very much invite, before we leave the room, also to have a chat with them. And on the question of, are we romanticizing the state when it comes to sanitation, I'm going to invite Kavita to answer that or play with that and also close for us. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm actually, the way I understood your question is also, what can the citizens do? And I'm going to speak to that bit and actually connect it to your, first, second, the question on caste. I was going to say this in the closing, but one of my friends who's nothing to do with sanitation asked me, you really think sanitation is a problem? We've managed to put men and women in space and on the moon, and we've not taken care of how to take care of our own shit. And the reason, and that, this is a question we often ask ourselves, why is it that with so much progress, we've not been able to answer this question? And to us, to me at least personally, often the question comes back to the question of caste, or race, or ethnicity, and the fact that there was always somebody, and there is always somebody to take care of our waste, right? We throw, like you're saying, you throw the solid waste on the street, you flush it off, and you don't care. And why I'm saying this and linking it to your question of citizenship, I think there is a big role, and particularly because we've seen the intersectionality, gender, caste, other class, I think the first thing the citizens can do is actually be mindful and educate themselves a little bit about what is happening to the waste, because we tend to look at the roads and we tend to look at the big buildings, but we totally forget about the other part of our city. And And then actually, like Claudie said, break the taboos. I think that's very important. And we have a character called Kakaman, which actually talks about shit. And I think it's very, very important to do that, to start talking about it. And then finally put the pressure on the government. So I would say the citizens have a great role to play because, first of all, I feel a lot of things talked about here, the panelists have talked about. It's very, very, it is a social concern. Also, we are looking at. But also to say that, no, I don't think we can romanticize the role of the state. I think one of the discussions over the past 1 week that you need the community, you need the private sector workers, but you do need the state. Sanitation is a public goal. I would say, yes, we can romanticize and say they've done far more than they have, but I think the state needs to be there and center. So I will now close, yeah? So before I start I'll just take 2 minutes to close, but before we actually do this, I want everybody to give a round of applause to our panelists here who did a fabulous job. Thank you all very, very much. It was a pleasure to host you for the panel. I want to just say a couple of things to just kind of round off thing. First one, which I already said, that the problem needs to be addressed. Can't wait in the future. But let me say that I'm very glad that we've been talking about sanitation for last 1.5 hours, and we've not used the word affluent, biosolids, aerobic, and anaerobic. And these are the words we often use. He's laughing. We often use when we talk about sanitation. And the reason I say this is that reiterating which has come out, sanitation is not a technology problem. Sanitation is not an engineering problem. I have many colleagues who are engineers, so I'm not diminishing the role of engineers or engineering, but it is a discipline or a profession can solve. And I complexity come across that it is very much, I think Adriana began by saying it's overdue and there are a lot of taboos around it, and we spoke about taboos. And the irony is, but sanitation is such a basic part of our life that everybody is involved. It's the state, it's at the household level, it's about who cleans the toilet at home, it then goes into the neighborhood, who's responsible for it. And I think we need to keep this in mind. Sanitation is a part of our life, it is complex, there are many actors involved. And to say that we talked about the full sanitation, one of the reasons why it's also so complex is because if you want to address sanitation, you want full chain, which plays out in different ways. So the reason why I had so many stakeholders, Elder spoke about donors. So that's on, I'm assuming part of it is on the treatment side. So you have the donors, you have the state government, then you have somewhere in the middle, and then we have households where the toilets are. So just to realize it's a complex chain and needs to. And just end by saying what I said, that the time for sanitation is now, whether it's in India or it's anywhere else. And we hope to spread the word about importance of sanitation. So with that, I would like to close and thank everybody who's taken the time to come here. Abhi, please announce that if they want to.
So as you all exit, IHS public frequently, and if you want, be updated about the public, sign up in the registration form. Other emails, public emailers which go out about the public IHS organizes. Yeah, thank you so much. There is also snacks and some tea, some refreshments for you outside. Please join us. Thank you.